Hi, good Thursday afternoon to you, or whenever you're watching this. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks so much for making time for the Thursday deep dive at the mic. Very grateful for your presence today. And we have some unfinished business from a previous discussion that we've got to get to today. First, let me say thank you, as always, to Hero West for putting together the thumbnails and making sure that we're distributed everywhere. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, we're over there, Rumble, all the links that you need posted later on at the Mike Show. There it is, .com. Everything you need is right there. And of course, you can follow Wes over on X at that guy at PGU. That is his handle. So we're grateful for everything he does. Also grateful for Gabby and all that she does over at the Instagram page. Follow her on X at Jeffy Apologist. Only the best graphics for this show at Jeffy Apologist. She runs Instagram over there. Look for at the Mike Show and follow along, please. So let's see. Our last deep dive a week ago, Brad was here with Kelly, and we went over a myriad of topics on the latest Barfleet installment. So if you missed that, it's pinned to the top. Also pinned to the top on the X page is last Friday's live stream. It was a girls' club. I had Jess, Kelly, and Laura here because Brad was serving his 1-game suspension for too many cat references. So
they're just cats.
They're just cats. And so there's a limit, and then, you hit that. And so we had to suspend you for 1 week.
Can you ever get too much cat?
Without pay. And so I will say, Brad, after today's live stream, I'm hitting the road, and I won't see you again. You and me and Rebecca will be doing the Friday live stream, but not until September 5th. I'll be back on September 4th, and it's going to be a very interesting show. So stand by for that. So no live streams after this until September 4th. And one of the places I'm going on my journey is a place that I know that you have been, Brad, and it is the UFO. I'm going to get this wrong, Don. I'm sorry. It's so great to see you, Don Schmitt, ladies and gentlemen. He's great got. Thank you. And in fact, if people missed the original conversation that we had, it's one of the most fascinating books ever. Witness to Roswell.
It really is good.
It is so good, man. I mean, and it's so. If you want a book that has references and I call them cross-examinations, but I mean, you talk about all the witnesses. Hundreds of them.
And then we have the 75th anniversary edition.
Ah, yes. See, that's where I fall short, man. I got to get that updated version.
3 new chapters.
3 new chapters. Okay. Witness to Roswell. Oh, yes.
And it will, if you don't think the government is rude to people, let me just tell you, that's what got me about that book.
That's a good way to say that. Ugh. And ladies and gentlemen, please follow Brad on X at Real Brad Staggs. Is there a specific place on social media where you hang out, Don, or are you smart and you avoid it like the plague?
I do tend to avoid it, though. I do have a new website, which is Roswell /investigator.com, and then certainly on Facebook under Donald Raymond Schmitt.
Okay.
So, and I do respond to people. I do make it a point, but I mostly still, and as the new web pages is demonstrating, that I'm still getting families whose fathers and mothers and grandparents were involved back in 1947 with the incident.
Wow. That is wild. There's the site, Keith, if you want it.
Oh.
And because a lot of the people, obviously the people who saw anything firsthand, how many of them are gone? All of them?
I would say I'm still hunting down one, and I have failed so far in that she was 10 years old at the time, so she's now 88, but still driving. I even have a make on the car, and yet everybody out in her area is still super protective. They know her, but they're not about to reveal her or give me any help as to, would you even pass on this letter? Would you even just introduce us? What have you? So it's classic in that they realize that the subject is still, this tightrope, situation with the government. And they're afraid they may actually get someone in trouble for speaking out.
Uh,
And I guess that in itself speaks volumes. The idea that you're talking about a damn weather balloon from 80 years ago and still might, somehow get someone hurt.
Right.
So, is she a direct witness? Do we know?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
oh
she
my
handled, from all the accounts I've heard, she actually handled. She lived out at one of the ranches, the adjoining ranches back in 47, and she actually handled some of that memory material.
Oh, wow.
golly, man. So, let me just catch people up in case they missed the April 10th episode, which I highly encourage you to go watch. It was fascinating from start to finish with Don. Absolutely. And we covered the incident in 1947, the aftermath, the cover up, the government intimidation. And then we kind of got to the end of the 2 hours, and I mentioned how awesome in the back of the book, it goes through where did these pieces of craft go? Where could that technology have ended up? And then you mentioned at the time, oh, that's a whole nother conversation. So that's why we wanted to have like a part 2 of this discussion of the Roswell UFO cover up, and bring you back on here because there's so much out there, and I don't even know where to begin, Don. I just want to turn it over to you, man. So okay, so what happened? I know let's start with Ohio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the material gets collected. It ends up, is it Wright-Patterson, right? Is that
Yeah, at the time it was Wright Field. It was
Right.
before they split off between the Army and the Air Force. So it was still Wright Field, but it adjoined Patterson Field at that time, and which served as a wonderful as far as barometer for us whenever we would speak to witnesses who were involved in either the transporting of the wreckage from Roswell or the remains, that we were able to ask them specifically, now, which base did you fly to? Was it Wright Field or was it Patterson? The moment they would tell us it was Wright Field, it disqualified them, because everything like Foreign Technology Division and Hangar 23, which we already had firsthand witnesses describing that the aircraft would taxi up to that very hangar, crates would be unloaded, taken inside, and that there was a tunnel that led from within the hangar and then connected it to that series of buildings that were, became part of that legend, that urban legend, the idea that there was a Hangar 18, that's where the bodies were kept at Wright-Pat. Well, there is no Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson. There's a building 18, and it's a series of buildings, A, B, C, D. It's not a hangar. It's a red brick series of buildings. But the main interest with 18 is that it was the home of Foreign Technology Division. This is now 8 years before Area 51 would even, be on the drawing boards. And even for the first 10 years at Groom Lake, it was nothing but a landing strip. That's all it was. So 51 had absolutely nothing to do with Roswell. And so, go ahead, Brad.
I was going to say, you mentioned, because right off the top you said bodies, or Keith, when you said bodies. And for anybody who is like, wait, bodies, that's one of the things I think a lot of people don't know about, the fact that there were that at least one of the bodies at Roswell was still kicking.
Yes.
And I think that's news to a lot of people.
And that we have from both military as well as civilian. One of the things that initially tipped us off that something much closer to Roswell was involved was the fact that you had both the sheriff's department in Roswell, Chavez County. Roswell was the county seat. And you had the sheriff as well as his deputies, and you had the fire department, that they were involved with the incident. Now, the debris field, which everyone is familiar with, we talk about all the wreckage, and the two intelligence officers, Major Jesse Marcel of the 509 Bomb Group, the first atomic bomb squadron in the world, and the head of counterintelligence, who was Captain Sheridan Cabot. They're too demonstrating that they wanted his involvement in the case this was something foreign. That would be his specialty. The point being that up to this point of military authority, and that being the very base commander at Roswell, Colonel William Blanchard, no one could identify this material. Now, why would the base commander, you've had a ranch foreman by the name of W.W. Brazo who reports the crash, and even in so much as that you might humor him, you would send out a couple of grunts, a couple of enlisted men, go check it out. But the base commander, Blanchard, he dispatches his head of intelligence, Major Jesse Marcel, who's the number one intel officer in the U.S. military at that time, because they're in charge of the atomic bomb. It's that simple. They were the elite within the military at that time. No one even coming close. And then you also send a head of counterintelligence in the event it's something foreign. Because again, it shows that the ante continues to rise on this growing situation. And then who does Blanchard call up immediately after the two officers follow Brazo back to the scene of the crime, so to speak? But he contacts his boss, head of the 8th Air Force in Fort Worth, and that was General Roger Ramey. Well, we're regressing a lot of what we covered in the last episode. But the reason that in even recounting the chain of activity, and then how this then would lead to the involvement of Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, that up until the point that they had secured and recovered truckload after truckload of wreckage, and the fact that, as Brad just brought up, the idea of a survivor, that the impact site, which is a side, it's separated by 27 miles.
Yes, two sites. I don't think people realize it's two different locations.
Just north of Roswell within Chavez County. The police, the sheriff's department, as well as the fire department, would have had zero jurisdiction going into another county where the debris field is located, which is Lincoln County. They would have been off limits. They would have been told, unless they had been asked to assist in any situation, stay out of it. It's none of your concern. So we continue to look for something much closer to town. And that's when we started to come up with the witnesses, not only to the remains of the capsule, the pod, this egg-shaped Volkswagen-sized, pod, and then the crew. And then as described by the sheriff and as described by the crew chief from the fire department, Dan Dwyer, there was a survivor. It was a live one. And then to listen to the accounts of the live one from the military, and then to the base hospital, and then to the hangar, and then all the way to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. And the best testimony we have concerning the survivor at Wright Field was he was a triple ace World War II, Colonel Marion Magruder. He was class of 47-48, the War College. And in April of 1948, they were assigned to Wright Field. We have the documents. Now, it doesn't specify what their assignment was, but nonetheless, they were there to see something, to observe something. And Magruder, before he passed, he would tell, independent of one another, his four sons, what they witnessed, what they were shown. And it was the survivor from Roswell, that they wanted the War College's opinion as to, what else do we need to do? Where else should we go regarding this? We don't know how much longer this being is going to even be alive. And so what would you recommend? They were seeking answers everywhere, considering they weren't getting anything from the survivor, as far as we know. Let's just say there was a major language barrier between the two.
A bit of one. And can I want to jump in here and say that's one of the things that makes your book so, and I'm not just blowing smoke, but the fact that you have crossed the T's and dotted the I's. And for anybody, because Moses in the chat just said, does anybody in the chat actually believe aliens exist? And it when you read this book, when you have a question about, well, what about this? Don has covered that. Yeah. I mean, to the point where the literal receipts for the flight and what was on the flight, the manifest and the crew lists. I mean, it's not conjecture.
No.
All this stuff is in writing. Now, short of having a picture of and they don't look like little green. This is Grok's idea of an alien. But what were they described as looking like?
Well, a very short in stature, 3.5 to 4 feet in height, disproportionately larger heads, horse eyes, not your big almond, almost like abduction eyes, like the little puppet behind you there, Brad. Right. But more like horse eyes.
Right.
And a thin slit for a mouth, diminutive nose, as far as no outer appendage, as far as either of the ears, but that they were all and described in every account that they were wearing a silver jumpsuit from the neck, did not cover the hands. There were 4 fingers with an opposable thumb, and it was cinched at the waist and then cinched at the ankles, and then there were foot coverings as well. I find it interesting, and I catch them at the museum in Roswell constantly. This constant depiction of naked aliens, and it's like, I'm sorry,
right?
Whether it's the Travis Walton case, whether it's I mean, just on and on and on, they're always described as wearing garments, wearing some form of jumpsuit or spacesuit, what have you. And so it's almost like we're trying to lower them in as far as our human perspective, that they're like animals, they're critters.
Right.
They don't even know they don't even wear garments, they even wear clothes, that type
right.
of thing.
Well, and if somebody didn't know what a human looked like, or wasn't familiar with the human form and saw, I don't know, somebody wearing a spandex outfit, they might think that was their skin. So I can, it's understandable that there would be. Plus, if some of the panicked stories that we get, the descriptions of aliens, I would imagine that your brain is scrambling.
The last thing you're concerning yourself with is, are they wearing any form of emblem on their lapel?
Right. Are they Jordache jeans or what? So that's the brain does strange things in recollection.
Yeah. And just to kind of buttress the point that Brad made about the way the book is written, it's an investigative book. It's not I believe in aliens and you should too, and I'm going to pull out every possible thing to get you on my side. No, it just throws out facts, and the way you just mentioned how you were able to discount witnesses that incorrectly referred to the Wright-Patterson situation in Ohio, and just things like that, and it's little things like that go a long way in convincing me of coming off of the fence. Whereas I start reading your book and I'm at 50-50. And then after I read it, look, I don't know what they are, but I sure as hell know something otherworldly happened in New Mexico in 1947. And if you need any proof, just look at how the government responded. From the silencing of the radio station to the changing the press release to the fake evidence in the office in Fort Worth. I mean, we could go on and on and on. The intimidation of witnesses down to little girls. I mean, it goes on and on. So,
and what's wonderful, gentlemen, is that from our zeitgeist, from our present day, perspective, that because we have witnessed. We've seen an entire litany of similar treatment for something not nearly as extraordinary, but nonetheless, we see what tactics the government will resort to as far as in their attempt to silence witnesses to something they do not want divulged. And I'm sorry, no one has been to date able to demonstrate another example where they resorted to such extreme measures over a weather balloon.
Right.
I'm sorry. Unless someone else can do that, you cannot plug that in to this equation. And whether it was the highest ranking military down to, as you mentioned, 14-year-old girls back at that time, that their reaction, their response to all of this was identical, like they were truly dealing with something beyond the pale. Nothing that they could compare this to. I always point out that, what was the typical, personage of an alien back in 1947? Not little gray men, not even little green men.
It was the big tall.
They look like us.
Yeah.
Flash Gordon, space, sorry, Buck Rogers, that type of thing. Yeah. And what did they fly? They flew rockets.
Right.
And so this broke the mold once and for all. I mean, it was where they had to come up to speed, and there was nothing in the Army field manual of how to deal with this. And that's another reason that they brought in all the outside personnel that they did. Even the hospital was evacuated. They brought in outside doctors and nurses to take charge. And it's been our supposition now for many years that if you saw the movie Oppenheimer, and even before that, in reading General Leslie Groves' own book, and that he specifically brought up the fact that Oppenheimer was constantly questioning who his outside people were every time they'd arrive at Los Alamos. Who are all these people, all these civilians that I have no idea, what their backgrounds are. And Groves will always, reassure him, they're with me. And then he would eventually identify them as his S1 people. And these were people who had been readied. They had gone into training in the event the bomb failed. That if they had a major, catastrophe at hand at Trinity back in July of 45, that these would have been the people who would have come in and essentially covered up the entire display. And so we're convinced that the people that came in at the time of Roswell were S1. These were all the people whose primary function was subterfuge, how to shut this down, how to close Roswell off, how to close New Mexico off, how to deal with the press, how to silence the witnesses, how to deal with the military, who were then prevented from becoming involved because Roswell essentially was shut out of the entire recovery operation. It was mostly outside personnel that were brought in. Now, why would you bring in outside personnel? Again, for the recovery of a standard off-the-shelf weather balloon. And then why would you then need to send it on to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio for testing and analysis? Again, explain that to me, Mr. Skeptic. Explain that to me.
What happened to the Jesse Marcel picture of him kneeling there on the floor with all the stuff in front of him, which was, and again, when you read the book, you'll see that was a swap out for the stuff that he really had brought over to. But what happened to that stuff? What happened to those pieces, they were pieces of a weather balloon? Do we know what happened to those things? Those props?
What's interesting is that, and he's pictured in 4 of the photographs, and that is who I'd mentioned earlier, who would have been the base commander at Roswell, Colonel Blanchard's boss, and that was General Roger Ramey. Well, Ramey is pictured in 4 of the shots, not the 2 with Marcel, but 2 by himself, and then 2 additional with his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas DuBose. When I interviewed, and I was with Stan Friedman when we did it down in Orlando, we met with DuBose, then a 1-star, a brig general. And I asked General DuBose, where did the balloon come from? And I knew where it came from, but I just wanted to hear it from him. And he went, well, it sure didn't come from here because we didn't launch them. And he said, well, I know they launched over in Roswell, which they did. In fact, even in the base yearbook from 1947, there's a photograph of these very radar kites with the neoprene rubber balloons. As their kites are suspended, the array of these radar kites in a hangar at the base at Roswell. And we even interviewed like Earl Fulford, the sergeant with the 603rd, who would assemble these balloons because they would launch them twice a day in conjunction with their bomb drop exercises. They would load up sand barrels of equivalent size and weight to an atomic bomb, and they would do test drops around the outskirts of the city of Roswell. Well, they would launch these radar balloons with these arrays of these radar kites to a high altitude, and because of the sonobuoy that would be suspended beneath them, it would keep it as stationary as possible to take as many readings as far as jet stream, upper jet stream, barometric pressure, as far as wind direction, that type of thing. Anything that would assist the bombardiers in conducting these tests. So nobody knew these balloons better than the personnel at Roswell.
Right.
And we even have Sergeant Robert Porter. You want to go back to that first shot, Brad?
The very first one with
just Marcel.
Marcel, there.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Hang on a second. I have to push that button too. There we go. Sorry.
Now, if your viewers will look closely, underneath the shredded radar kite, which is nothing more than foil, wooden sticks, string, and tape. That's all it is. You will observe that there's a sheet. You can see where it extends off to the right. It's rolled brown paper wrapping. It's just, what they used back then to wrap things up. Sergeant Robert Porter, when that plane, that B-29, which was called Dave's Dream, taxied up to the operations building, and Marcel had boxes of the actual wreckage up in the flight cabin. What Porter and a few of the others were doing were loading up these brown paper wrap packages up into the bomb bay, unbeknownst to Marcel and the others up in the flight cabin. And there's the brown paper. And Porter would describe that 3 of them were the size of a shoebox. In some of the other pictures, you will see one of the brown paper wrap boxes still by the heat registered. And you see the brown paper beneath the kite. And you see where it's rolled out from behind where the nose is there. And according to Porter, one of the brown paper wrap packages was triangular in shape, about 2.5 to 3 feet in diameter. So where did the balloon come from? It came from Roswell. Now, the testimony from Marcel, he describes how. Now, I want you both to also keep in mind, the original destination was not Fort Worth. It was Wright Field. Once they were airborne, Marcel thought they were going to Wright Field with boxes of the actual wreckage. Once they were airborne, the pilot is on his radio, on his earphones, and he says, "We've just been diverted to Fort Worth. General Ramey wants to see the wreckage." So they swing down to Fort Worth, and Marcel would actually take a box of the real wreckage and place it on General Ramey's desk. The general would then take him to a map room to check out the location. And when they returned, Marcel is shocked to see that the box of wreckage is gone. Someone's removed it from the office, and in its place, scattered on the floor in front of the general's desk, is a clump of black, rotting neoprene rubber balloon and that shredded radar reflector kite. Now, there's a hallway of reporters waiting to see the pieces of the flying saucer just arrived from Roswell. And Ramey would only allow one reporter into the room, and that was James B. Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram newspaper. So there's Ramey in one of his 4 pictures with, again, off-the-shelf weather balloon material.
Just
And
maddening.
that matches the shape of those.
Yes, and what Porter described that they loaded up into the bomb bay.
Right.
And then the skeptics would say, as they have, well, Marcel was up in the flight cabin. You mean he didn't see what was going on in the bomb bay behind him? And it's like, oh, so you've been in B-29s, you know the internal design of the bomber. Well, no. Well, but it's like, but I have been. And it's not an open gateway into the bomb bay from the flight cabin. It's a porthole. You have to crawl through. And it's a door with a hatch, and it's closed. Any activity in the bomb bay is oblivious to anyone who's up in the flight cabin. Again, it's just black and white. There's nothing further that I need to explain.
Right. They could hide it from him, in other words, and he would not have known what was going on back there.
Exactly.
He was they used him. They used him.
He was the
total patsy. The
And
government
the other
has
thing-
never
and the other
used
thing-
people as patsies
And the, other
before.
thing, and the other thing, gentlemen, this is the most curious thing at all, and I may have mentioned this to you before, but the fact that it's after Marcel poses for the pictures, the 2 pictures, and he has that look of just, he knows what's going down. He knows that he's being used, that he's been set up in all this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's then first he is sworn to secrecy by Ramey. He's told not to say the truth, not to tell any of the reporters in the hallway anything about the true nature of the material. And then it's added, and you are not even to utter a word about this to your own wife, who he wouldn't see until the next evening, because they would continue holding him for another day and a half in Fort Worth. So they were making sure that they controlled the narrative and that they had the final word on all this.
And he wasn't the only one they basically kidnapped. I mean, they held other people. That's the part that just.
Yeah. The rancher, the idea that as a civilian, whereas unless martial law be declared, that the military has absolutely no authority over us whatsoever. And the fact that they would have kidnapped the rancher, the ranch foreman, Mac Brazo, and then detained him at the base for 5 full days, depriving him of food, water, sleep. They subjected him to a full Army physical, including a full body cavity search for a weather balloon.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. You can finish so many of these sentences with "for a weather balloon," and it just makes it so obvious. Now, one of the things that I obviously wanted to get into today is the aftermath and the technology that very likely came from that incident in Roswell and how it was distributed. And I kind of wanted you to walk us through the trail before you start discussing some of these. Like one of the things that I just found fascinating in the book were how the train tracks were so close between Wright Field and one of the companies that was involved in the aftermath there. I mean, it's the proximity is just incredible. But I wanted to play just a video here for you. If I could find it, I may have closed that tab. No, there we go. This video is from 11 years ago, and to my understanding, and it kind of blends in nicely with Ashton Forbes, a guest that we've had here on the live stream, talking about the disappearance of MH370. And I'm not asking you to comment on that or take a position either way. But one of the things that he recently uncovered was, ironically, a video presentation from about a decade ago at Lockheed about the very technology that Ashton contends disappeared MH370. And so with that in mind, and Lockheed on the brain here, I wanted to play this video for you. And just if you have a comment on it, because as I watched this, all I could think about was Roswell. And I was like, I can't wait to play this for Don and see what he says.
New materials that are on the lab bench right now, they can literally change shape on command. They can become almost a muscular material.
You could have an airplane that optimizes its shape for the different flight conditions it's in.
There's definitely a lot of amazing technology that's going on. New materials.
So there you go. All right. So I wanted to see, like I said, all I could think of was, holy crap, I guarantee you that came from a field in Roswell.
Or at least it was the impetus as far as
yes,
the possibility of having shape-shifting materials that will assist in the aerodynamics.
But it sounds like we've applied the technology that the witnesses described in your book to a T.
Yes. In fact, we can go all the way back to that fall of 1947 when Wright Field contracted Battelle Institute just down the road in Columbus, Ohio, specifically with the assignment in the
pull.
I thought there was a dramatic pause.
I did too. I thought, what's he about to drop on us? Hopefully we'll get that reestablished.
While we're waiting on that, I remembered this. I remembered reading about this not too long ago, within the last year, that scientists had discovered metal that can heal itself. And this is a press release from Sandia National Laboratory in Albuquerque from 2023. And the headline is "Stunning Discovery: Metals that can heal themselves." Scientists for the first time have witnessed pieces of metal crack, then fuse back together without any human intervention.
Time out. Let me play this card for a second. Scientists just discovered.
Yes.
I have contended in the past on other topics, and I'm going to apply it to this one, that in the government, maybe at the White House, maybe at the Pentagon, I don't know, but I swear there is a timeline. Okay, so a friend, Ellen, who I've interviewed on a previous episode, she talked about the soap opera storyboard, right? And it just takes up an entire wall, and that way you keep your characters straight and you get all this. That is what I imagine they have. All right, and then in 2023,
right,
we're going to reveal that, hey, we got these metals that can heal themselves, even though they've probably had it on their shelf since 1947.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, this when I saw this, and I think I read about it last year, and it was like the big news, and I thought, well, they've had this, for a very long time. And if you ask Grok or probably any AI interface, I asked it what specifically were the items that we have in modern day life that were allegedly created from alien technology that we learned from the crash at Roswell. And it goes down the list of integrated circuits, microchips, lasers. I hadn't thought about that. Lasers, fiber optics, transfer capacitors, described as molecule-sized heat-free switching devices from alien tech, potentially influencing high-speed computing and energy-efficient electronics. And then the metamaterials, the memory metal, claimed to originate from self-healing shape memory alloys in the debris that remember their form after deformation, now used in eyeglass frames, medical stents, and aerospace components. But the self-healing, and then what I thought,
it made its debut in a family kitchen in Roswell, New Mexico, and in a diner in Roswell, New Mexico. I mean, this is.
I know.
And what sucks is that is how our government goes about this stuff, man. It just
They're
come
sneaky
on.
bastards.
And everything falls under the purview of national security. Give me a break.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to hearing about the materials that were sent to Columbus from Don when we reestablish here.
I hope he didn't get.
Right. The aliens say this guy knows too much.
I sent him a text and said, log back in when you can. We'll see.
I'm keeping an eye. Yeah. But
night vision goggles is the other. Said to be based on image intensifying lenses from the alien headgear or craft. Now, can this be? Yeah, I mean, can this be hyperbole and fake and make? Yep, absolutely.
Sure.
But
I'm going to be using night vision goggles for the first time coming up on my little trip here. I'm looking forward to that. Kind of excited.
Do we know where you're going?
No.
Okay.
My mind. All over. All north. I hear it's cooler up there.
I hear it is. Canada is beautiful this time of year. Particle beams gleaned from energy weapons or propulsion systems in the wreckage, influencing directed energy weapons and scientific tools like particle accelerators. Also, depleted uranium projectiles. These were derived from dense penetrating materials, that's what she said, in the craft used in armor-piercing ammunition for tanks and aircraft.
It really puts the Cold War into a whole new frame of reference, doesn't it?
And that's why when people say, well, why would they try to keep all this secret? Why would they not want people to know about Roswell?
Fine, but let's just say that
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the
right. But let's just say on its surface that's why you don't want this getting out, because you don't want them knowing you have this alien tech.
Damn Ruskies.
So what? It landed in our backyard.
Right.
It doesn't. I mean, who cares if you know where it came from? We're the ones that have put it to such great use.
Well, and likely, this just struck me as being, we are. If we have advanced material, if we have this alien tech that is super duper and does amazing magic things, and we can create these amazing machines and have these fantastic tools that came from technology that is not of this earth, why are we $37 trillion in debt?
Because you know what? Because we're lottery winners as a nation. If this alien stuff landed in our backyard and we don't know how to spend this money, man.
Well, isn't that weird? I mean, you'd think that
yeah,
but that would be. It hurts my brain.
It does. I understand completely. Did you hear the Anna Paulina Luna interview with Joe Rogan, where she talked about some of this alien tech and not getting access to it as
he says he's rebooting the entire system went down.
Oh gosh, I hope everything's okay, because I just hope the weather's okay. You never know.
That's true. The Anna Paulina Luna.
Yeah,
I've seen her.
Yeah, and did you see the little discussion she had about aliens and technology? And
do I have to listen to her? Can I just look at her? Okay. Is that wrong? I don't mean to.
I don't want to have to give you another suspension,
By the way, before we get there.
Oh, tell me about the museum. I can't wait to go there.
This is.
Is that it? Is that from there?
This is the inside. This is from a long time ago, though.
Did you break anything when you were there?
I tried to. But this is from a lot, because there's a lot more stuff in here now. Like looking down, I actually shot a video from standing right here, and you can see looking down this way. We did our broadcast from a little office right down on the right-hand side.
But I see what he's saying about how the depictions aren't anything, right? I mean, are they naked there?
Well, Don actually put the when those props, when those dummies were first built, it was for a TV show, and I can't remember. He'll have to explain it. But Don went in and put the collars and the little wristbands on them and the little things around their ankles, because otherwise it looked like they were naked.
I see. Okay, so he's the one.
He's the one. Yeah, Don takes care of this stuff. He goes in there, and that's when I was down there, and I told him, hey, when something breaks next time, if you because he travels quite a bit, I said, when you can't. If you can't get there, I said, just call me, because I'll jump
You'll be
in
the
there.
curator.
I will jump in there and fondle those bad boys and fix them all up good. And I don't. I'm going to tell you because you'll be disappointed if I don't tell you. So the aliens used to move.
Oh no! It's like this little very slow,
very slight. And because I
was looking forward to this. What? Oh no!
I know, and I figured that, but I'm gonna just because they were made for as a prop for a TV show or for a movie. I can't remember. They were made with latex and neoprene, and they had little air bladders inside them that could be inflated and deflated. That would cause them to appear as if they were breathing, and they would move their head.
Yeah,
very slightly.
And I'm going to interrupt you real quick just because there's this little museum off the beaten path there in South Dakota where they have the props from the movie, the Kevin Costner movie, Dancing with Wolves. And so you got that breathing buffalo thing.
Okay, yeah.
And it's so simple, but yet I'm still impressed. Well, anyway, continue.
But the first time I saw, because I've been to the museum a couple of times, the first time I was like, I swear they moved. And if you stand there and I was like, and then I did see him because it was like a very slight head turn. And this time I stood out there before the museum opened.
Oh no!
And I was staring. I was like, wait, when are they going to move? And because I think it's every hour the smoke machine comes on, the little thing. I think the ship starts spinning, but then they didn't move. And I was talking to Don, and he said, eventually the bladders that filled up with air started to crack the neoprene or the rubber material that the aliens are made out of. So they had to turn it off because otherwise it would have split them wide open. And so they don't move anymore.
That breaks my heart.
And mine too, because I stood there for a long time staring at them this time, waiting for them to move, and damn it, they don't. But I figure I could offer to go down there and fix them and make them move again. I think that'd be worth my time.
You actually can do that kind of stuff. That's
so
impressive.
Could you? So I could teach you how to make aliens move too.
No,
for a price. But yeah, it's really there's a lot more to this museum when you get down there. If you ever go to if you get to the museum, because it's
yeah. I'll be there in I don't know, about a week or so, or 2 weeks. Hell, I don't know. I'm disappearing. But that's on the.
I wasn't going to say a damn thing. I just I know nothing.
Yeah,
like Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes, which was a show back in the 1800s.
Are these pictures from the museum, right?
I don't know.
Yes.
Yes, those are pictures from the museum. I love those pictures from. This is a picture.
Oh, look at this! Look at this! Hey, Don's back.
Oh, good.
Are those pictures from the museum, Don?
Yes and no, but they're not accurate. They're
not accurate. Okay.
No.
You kind of read my mind there. Like I had a follow up like that. Okay, cool.
And first of all, I apologize. We, I don't know if you are aware, we had some major flooding over the weekend. And in fact, not only did we lose internet for almost 2 days, but then we were out of power. So we're still getting back to normal here.
I wondered if it had something to do with those floods.
We had about 12 inches of rain in 4 hours.
How did you live without the internet?
Yeah. Well, how does that work?
Well, for just being gone these last 10 minutes, again, it's another, example of where you become frantic to the point that I know we're on a schedule, and it's like I get tired of having to always apologize for the breakdown in technology.
Please don't. It happens to this show all the time. We're the common denominator.
Yeah. I know, and it's to the point like our museum down in Roswell, we have a full-time computer tech, and that's all he does, and just keeping everything up and running every day.
Well, and I was just telling Keith that I had offered you that when you're traveling and you can't get down there to fix the aliens or whatever, that you call me and I'm down there and I can fix stuff. So you just let me know and I will be there with the tool bag and I will make stuff work.
Well, I appreciate that. We talked about the Gort, the robot, and
Yes.
on the day
Yeah,
the Earth stood still,
I had that up because when you were talking about what the common I guess image that people had back in the 50s or the 40s rather, and into the 50s was that this is what aliens look like. That they look like robots like that, the big silver and this, and there's one of these replicas in the museum too. That was the common when they thought of people from outer space. That was it. So the little 3 foot tall beings were, it wasn't something that was taken from pop culture.
Well, whereas Gort, I mean, as in the picture, I mean, he is the robot that is artificially, constructed
Mm-hmm.
to serve as their police force, as they described it. But Klaatu, the actual visiting alien, he again is 100% human in appearance.
Right.
That he could walk right down the street and nobody would know any different.
Right. And they do live amongst us.
So, all right, Don, before the government jumped in and rudely cut you
We were
off.
talking about,
Yeah.
well, it was interesting that before that, though, you had mentioned, you talked about just down the road, and that would have been the Timken plant, which is just in Camden, Ohio. And the thought being, and we have the first-hand witnesses that they loaded up a number of crates of wreckage onto a freight car through the east gate of the Roswell Army Airfield, just across the tarmac from Building 84, P3, that B-29 hangar that everything had transited through before being all shipped out. And that they decided, aside from air transport, that they also were going to, as far as train car, some of the material. And they had a specific agenda, because this train car, again, as witnessed and as described as far as by the people who were involved, that there were feds who were waiting for the car, and they loaded a number of these crates onto the back of a truck, and they went to the Timken plant just down the road from Wright Pat. And at the time, Timken had one of the hottest blast furnaces in the world. And so again, it was a demonstration of where they were making every effort to try to essentially, inflict some damage to this material.
Mm-hmm.
Scratch it, heat it up, break it, bend, what have you. And what's the irony in all this, quickly, is that it was a story that was confirmed by both Cabots. And I mentioned Sheridan Cabot was the counterintelligence officer who accompanied Marcel out to the crash site. And that Cabot, when we found him and all the discussions we had privately with him, I wasn't even there. I wasn't involved. You got the wrong person. I don't know what you're talking about. And yet he would give us little crumbs here and there. So the Cabots and the Marcels, they would get together once a week to play bridge. And so Marcel had returned from Fort Worth after he became the fall guy as far as the entire affair. And even Mary Cabot, Cabot's wife, would tell the story of how that first time they all got together, after everything now lay dormant, everything was quiet. The balloon press conference had succeeded. The press, bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And the subject was classified, top secret. You weren't even to bring it up in even closed conversation. So Mary is describing how on this first occasion, after the whole Roswell incident, the women remained in the front room and the men were in the kitchen. They had a piece of the wreckage and they were heating it up on the stove. So just as they failed with the blast furnace at the Timken plant in Camden, Ohio, here were the two head of intelligence, Marcel and Cabot, essentially doing the same thing on a much lesser degree. But nonetheless, it was like, damn it, does anything affect this stuff?
Right.
So then the obvious question was, well, Mary, then what became of that piece? What became of that piece they were heating up on the stove? And she said, oh, my husband quickly reminded Marcel that he better get rid of it. That it's classified, Jess, you better get rid of this. We're not supposed to have this. And the two men walked out onto the patio. When they came back, they didn't have it any longer. And that's where that story about something being under the Marcel patio. Even Cabot would bring that up. Do you guys ever think about breaking up that old Marcel patio? Well, when we went back to the city records and we found that concrete slab had just been poured 3 weeks before, that was the permit, and that the footings were still open along the grass line, and that you could easily have gone out and just tucked it underneath that concrete slab and talk about the perfect hiding place. Well, unfortunately, since we became involved, subsequent owners built a family room over the patio slab. So we have made offers.
Yes, that's my question.
And I think I even told you that even the Prince of Liechtenstein, Hans Adam II, even offered, if I could rebuild the house even better than it is, we would just like to, check underneath that concrete slab. And we're still knocking on the door, so to speak.
So they told you no. So they won't let you even look?
They still won't even. Well, what we'd like to do, without giving away too much, is that the Army has developed concrete penetrating radar. And so we'd like to at least have a shot with that technology and see if there is something indeed under the concrete.
Well, but what they found, the pieces that they found, I mean, how big?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Are the pieces that they handled back then?
The largest piece, which is the piece that created the furrow, the gouge, which it even mentions in the press release, that the rancher stored it in a livestock shed. What he stored in the livestock shed, which was still there till about 15 years ago, was that large piece that first day, that evening, Brazel went back with his pickup truck and dragged that piece 3 miles to the north and put inside that livestock shed. So it was about 10 foot in diameter. Most of the other pieces were generally the largest pieces. There was one section that was about 4 foot in diameter, we were told, but generally others were about the size of a handkerchief. But beyond that, most of them were just shards, were just little scraps of material.
I don't think you saw. I think you had just fallen. Your internet had just gone down. But I shared this with Keith. This from Sandia National Laboratories. It was in July of 23, and I think I read about it last year. But the metal that can heal itself.
Yeah. and that I had used that term as Wright Field at the time with Battelle Institute, self-healing metal.
Yeah.
And this is within weeks after Roswell, self-healing metal. And we were getting the runaround between Wright Field, Wright Pat, and Battelle, neither one claiming that there was such a project. And then finally, Battelle found progress report number 2, which came out at the end of 1948, describing their efforts to develop self-healing metal. Now, wouldn't we love to see progress report number 1? But the point being, the end result, which finally saw the light of day in 1963, was the alloy known as nitinol, combination of nickel and titanium. And you could go onto YouTube, just type in NITOL, nitinol, AL, and there will be demonstrations of people holding up this piece of metal, and then they dip it into hot water. And then when they retract it, it becomes like taffy. You can crumble it, you can twist it, you can shape it into any form you want. And then you have to disperse it into cold water where it will assume its original shape and size. Yeah, nitinol. I-frames, surgical equipment.
I have, and you probably can't see it very well, but I bought this, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and this will do. It's in the, I know you can't see this at all, but it's in the form of a giant paper clip, probably an inch or two across. And this, you can do the same thing. If I put this, stretch it out, if I drop this in hot water, it will bloop right back to the form of, right back to the paper clip form.
Its original shape, right? But here you have to go through these different stages. All the material, all the eyewitness accounts at Roswell describe it as right there before your eyes.
Right.
That a person could pull a piece of paper or a metal sliver out from a shirt pocket and say, "Did you ever see anything like this before?" As they would crumble it up, and then as they released their grip, it would flow like water between their fingers, that type of thing. So in other
And
words,
it was like mylar, right? It looked like mylar.
Perfect memory, but yet you couldn't cut it, you couldn't burn it, even a bullet wouldn't penetrate it. So,
so
not like mylar.
Can you talk to us about some of the patents that resulted in the aftermath of Roswell?
Well, that would then be assuming that there were direct developments from the
curious patents that came around after Roswell.
and I tend to side on those who still believe it's more of a cover-up of ignorance, and that they still can't find the on button, that they have not been able to bridge the technology, that we shouldn't assume or we shouldn't believe that we can automatically plug it in, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I think the best example I ever heard was the late Tracy Torme, the screenwriter, who said, excuse me, just imagine if you could send something as simple, excuse me, I need to.
Yeah, take your time. Please.
Why do I know that name? Tracy Torme wrote Mirage Men, Big Goodbye, Sliders.
Sliders.
Fire in the Sky.
Fire in the Sky. And his father was Mel Torme.
Okay.
Singer-composer.
Yeah. And Tracy just died last year.
He died just last year, very unexpectedly. And we were dear friends. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
Tracy would say you could take something as simple as a toaster oven and teleport it back in time and say back to the Middle Ages. And they might be able to disassemble it, put it back together again. But if you can't plug it in,
right,
you never get it to work. And that may be indeed exactly what we're facing with such advanced technology.
Man,
and the reason I mention all this is that he was a flight engineer with the 393rd Bomb Squadron. His name was Sergeant William Ennis. And as a flight engineer, not a flight mechanic, engineer, these guys could take apart those B-29 silver plates down to the last rivet and put them back together again. And it took me years to get him to even talk about Roswell. I wasn't there. I was on assignment in Puerto Rico, that type of thing. Was never involved. So it's just a couple weeks before he dies, and his son calls me up and says, "Dad would like to see you one last time." And I'm thinking, deathbed. And
Confession.
So I couldn't get back. I couldn't get to him fast enough. I'm sitting with him. And he was a big NASCAR fan. So it was a Sunday afternoon, and I let him get comfortable, and he was watching the race. And he knew his time. In fact, he probably knew it was probably the last race he'd even see. And he kept looking at me, and he kept smiling. And I saw that something was coming. And then he says to me during a a red flag. Don, before I go, you got to find out how that damn thing flew. It didn't have a moving part on it. No moving parts, no propulsion, no engine, no wiring, no vacuum, no that type of thing, no moving parts. So then we're getting back to what they demonstrate as far as with Lockheed and the idea that the shape shifting, the contortion, the metamorphosis of the materials, the shape throughout the concept of flight.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that what if the memory material was the propulsion? That as it, it's almost like the more it flexes, it pushes itself forward faster and faster and faster. It's almost like the concept of external combustion technology, which we are working on, and we may have mastered by now. And what we're filming specifically over some of the Nevada test sites were these dumbbell contrails more and more, which in itself is unusual. It isn't just a steady stream of contrail. They're dumbbell, like a pulse technology, and that's what it is.
Oh, that's what you're saying. I thought you meant stupid.
You
meant literal dumbbell.
Yeah,
I was like, I got you. Okay.
I get it. Yeah.
And that for each pulsation, it propels the craft faster and faster and faster and faster. And would that be the case as far as with this memory material? The idea as it compresses and expands, and it literally will drive the craft faster and faster and faster. And then that all becoming part of this idea of thought projection. The idea that I crawl into the driver's seat and I tell it what to do. That you become an integral part of the craft. That you are, essentially AI, as we are presently becoming extensions of our machines, that the machine becomes an extension of us. And so it really gets into some of the more extreme theories about all this. But then I come back to, as far as William Ennis, no moving parts. And then I go back to, it was a draft that was prepared. It's about 7 pages long from the Air Intelligence Requirements Division that came out in October of 1947. And they were sending it out to all their listening posts throughout the world. And they were asking, for example, do we know where the Horton brothers are? We want to talk to the Horton brothers because they were in the process of creating the flying wing and mastering the flying wing technology at the same time that Northrop was, where we had the flying wing. And the Horton brothers, they were talking about immediately going to jet propulsion and even rocket propulsion with a flying wing. So they wanted to talk to the Horton brothers. And then they were talking about, do we have any information at all regarding aircraft devoid of engine and propulsion systems? So this is, again, immediately after Roswell. So then you plug in what Ennis is saying about no moving parts, and it's like, okay, now that makes sense. Why are they making inquiries about aircraft devoid of propulsion? And so we keep coming back to what were the functionality of the fiber optic like materials that were described at Roswell. You have the nearly indestructible materials that even a 16-pound sledgehammer couldn't scratch, as described by Marcel. Was that the outer shell, so to speak, or the, and then you have the I-beams structures. Is that part of the skeleton? And then you have the memory material. What was the purpose of the memory material? And again, I'm asking, was it the propulsion? And
Skunk
so it
Skunk
comes
Works
down-
was developed just before Roswell, 1943. Lockheed opened, or I guess that's the theory, that they began the Skunk Works, which was all about propulsion and the jet aircraft, like the P-38 Lightning in 1940,
Right.
around 1940. So this would
World
all
War
tie
II,
into that.
Mhm. And isn't it interesting that the late Senator Harry Reid, before his passing, suggested that he had sources at Lockheed that talked about reverse engineering the technology.
Wow, I didn't know
And,
that.
and we have had firsthand at Lockheed, at Boeing, at Battelle, at Rand, at Hughes, at General Electric, at Bell, at Bureau of Standards, all talking, or Los Alamos, all describing their failed efforts to crack the technology. Now, it doesn't mean that there hasn't been some breakthrough. Doesn't mean, I know it's even joked that maybe even like Velcro is something that we developed, from,
Right.
Roswell recovery. I'm willing to accept that fiber optics, because that is clearly described at Roswell, that these silken strands of material like microfilament fishing line, and you
Mhm.
could hold a light to one end and the light would emit out the opposing end. Well,
Incredible.
that's fiber optics.
Yeah.
But yet fiber optics wouldn't be developed until around 1970. So it may have still taken them a few years to crack that. But nonetheless, we know they've been working on memory material, self-healing metals, since immediately after Roswell. And no one has been able to demonstrate that prior to Roswell, there was any such development or efforts in the creation of such materials. I think we were perfectly satisfied with aluminum aircraft. I mean, keeping in mind, aside from Spruce Goose, as far as Howard Hughes, that even the Germans, like the Horton brothers, were using paneled wood in the construction of their aircraft prototypes. So the skies were still quite pristine, quite virgin back in 1947. That's the wonderful thing about that time period, that there are so few alternative possibilities.
Right.
And yet we're still faced with the materials, what the eyewitnesses were describing, and unanimously. And they're all describing something fantastic, something wonderful, something well beyond our technology. And as Brad even mentioned, as far as with the nitinol, and it's been applied now to surgical equipment, glass frames that you can twist. But
Mhm.
but they're thin strands of the material. It's not like a sheet of the material that you first have to heat and then cool before it will return to its original shape and size. We're getting there though. So it still comes back to the impetus. What inspired us? What motivated us to seek out these new alloys, these new materials? Also keeping in mind that, and I think every time we've had a recovery of a meteorite, and the elements within are extent throughout the universe. Everything that is here on planet Earth is extent throughout the universe. We're not finding any new metals or materials or alloys or anything. It still comes down to how are they arranged, how are they connected, how are those molecules, linked to create either a memory material or something so thin and light and yet strong that even a bullet can't penetrate it. Well, then we have Kevlar, don't we? So we don't know.
I grew up in Lancaster, California, and right next to Palmdale, and we had the Lockheed, Rockwell, Plant 42, all of that. And my friend, I just found out yesterday, I knew he worked. I thought it was probably Northrop, one of those. Anyway, I said, where did LP work? My friend's dad, and he worked at the Skunk Works at Plant 42. And at the time when we were in high school, the test pilots, they would all come over. Tom Pugh, who was he would come over. They'd sit by the pool, and we'd when you're in the midst of that, you don't realize you're in the who these people really are.
Midst of greatness, truly.
Yeah, exactly. And it was I'm pretty sure it was Tom Pugh that I asked back in 1992, because I did the series on UFOs for the Nashville Network, and Tom, what about UFOs? He said, if I told you what I know about UFOs, we'd both be dead. And that blew me away, and that's what now we're seeing, because I was keep seeing Skunk Works and Rockwell and all of these things. It's all coalescing. I'm starting to think that's why I was put here on Earth.
And I was about to say, what he told you only becomes even more clear when you read Witness to Roswell.
Yeah,
right.
So true.
And God knows, and I always, emphasize the point that the government / military doesn't manufacture so much as a bullet.
Right.
Everything is contracted out into the private sector.
Yes, sir.
And then everything from Roswell obviously was assimilated into the private sector, with the hope that someone would break the code, someone would find the on button. And I find it, ironic that you can't file a Freedom of Information Act request to any private corporation, specifically the military-industrial complex.
Never thought about that. Yeah.
The idea that you could send a FOIA to Boeing, and they would acknowledge anything, they would tell you where to go.
Right.
And so they have that built-in umbrella protection. And then we have the warning as far as from then former President Dwight Eisenhower about the military-industrial complex. Because what would empower a private corporation beyond any government, and is that would be to be sitting on or developing technology that the highest bidder would then step forward. And as a result, you're holding a trump card that no one else has. It becomes an internal race to the moon, so to speak. And again, as the late Stanton Friedman would describe, that the first country to reverse and develop the technology would rule the planet. We'd have a whole fleet of, flying saucers. And it would be like having a whole, unit of Gortz robots that essentially could put out any fire anywhere in the world if necessary. And it becomes a big bargaining tool in the sense that, without becoming political, the idea that I, for one, believe that the one thing that placed, aside from the bomb, that placed the United States in the position of power and in the driver's seat, so to speak, is Roswell.
This is exactly what we said when you were offline.
That we have the technology, we're getting closer and closer, and you better play nice. Otherwise, you have no idea what we have in our arsenal.
So do you think that other governments know that or believe this?
Yes. And I believe that much of our foreign aid is hush money. It's to essentially pay their cooperation, pay their silence. In other words, you cooperate with us on such matters. Otherwise, why are we so beholden to so many other foreign countries?
Because now that I think it through a little bit more thoroughly than I did a half an hour ago, I guess that if it becomes clear that the United States of America has alien technology then how dare they sit on this for the betterment of the world? You should release this life-changing information technologies that could save humanity in so many forms. Never mind weapons of war, but just the numerous inventions just rattled off by Brad moments ago.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not the military's purview. They look at the weaponization of everything.
Yeah.
How can we make it into a bigger stick?
Yeah. And that would be why all the secrecy. That would be why they immediately flipped on the it wasn't a flying saucer, it was a weather balloon, because somebody up top spanked the general at Roswell, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
This is money. Come up with something.
And we already have the Soviets breathing down our necks. We know they're going to have the bombs sooner than later, and this may give us an upper hand. And so, and you're looking for answers. You have no answers. You have a survivor, no communication that we're aware of, and as a result, it's like we have to rely not on our own people, but on the Boeings and as far as the Bells at that time and the Hughes and Battelle, with the hope that they will come up with the answers that we need. And my concern, and I would hear this from officers at the Pentagon and SAC officers and retired officers more and more, that their biggest qualm was the fear that the old order was not passing it down to the new. That whatever glimmers of information that they may have acquired at times, in most cases, they took it with them.
Wow.
All the highest ranking officers at Roswell took this with them, for example. The ones who were at Wright Field, they took this with them. They, not even their own families. In some cases, there were deathbeds. I mean, and we're still counting and relying and tracking down families because we're still getting deathbeds. That's why we're still going after the relatives with the hope that something was still said at the last moment. But
there hasn't been a definitive, right? There has not been to date. There has not been any deathbed confession that said, "Look, or that, hey, by the way, I've been sitting on this picture of the alien now for 80 years. Here it is." Has that happened yet?
We've had a lot of false alarms. I can't tell you, gentlemen, how often we have been invited into homes with the hope that we could search and go through rooms, go through attics, go through basements. Nothing like going through a crawl space down in New Mexico, not knowing what snakes and lizards are down there. But they have to be checked.
Right.
And we've made mistakes at times because we've relied on experts to tell us something looked good, something looked genuine. And that's where I'm to the point right now. I trust the science. I no longer trust the scientists. 10 scientists in a room, you got 10 different versions of the same, test, the same version, interpretation, that type of thing. And so I agree with you that there's still something out there. There's still evidence out there. It's no reason that we've had now 5 archaeological digs at the crash site. It's no reason that we will have another one. The next time we're going to be using subterranean radar drones that we can cover a much larger area of the region. But we realize it's going to come down to us. And so getting back to this idea that, okay, the military industrial complex may be calling all the shots. And I even hearkened back to like the Iran-Contra affair. And then with the testimony of Colonel Oliver North. And he kept referring to the basement White House as though there was a secret government. Was this his way of talking about this breakaway society, this breakaway government, this breakaway technology that has been able to crack, 1947, but they refuse to share it with the rest of the world because it's going to be their bug out, as far as program, should they need to, get out of Dodge in a hurry, so to speak. Because my concern is, I was talking about the officers that I've been talking with through the years and not being handed down the information. My other concern is, what if they've lost track of who's got what? What if the new owner, because they have not been briefed, they have not been kept up to speed, they don't know who possesses what at the moment. And here's the other dilemma. What if it's all gone? What if they distributed it all out, and the government actually has nothing left? Or they don't know where to look for it. And it's not as though they could call for disclosure tomorrow and they could actually demonstrate the memory material when they may not even know who's in possession of it presently.
Hell, I mean, the same could apply to these companies too. Different people in charge over the years, and they don't know what's in their own laboratories.
Do you remember at the ending of the movie, the first Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark?
The big warehouse.
Yeah, and the big warehouse. And the moment I saw that, I'm thinking, Spielberg is telling us something here. So my scientific director, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who had done the Close Encounters movie with Spielberg, and I immediately, thereafter, I'm talking to Dr. Hynek, I'm talking to Allen, and I said, next time you talk to Spielberg, because they were talking about a sequel of CE3, you bring that up. I think I'm spot on. I think that's what he was referring to, what he was suggesting. So a year would pass, and I get a phone call, late one morning, and it's Dr. Hynek. He says, I'm sitting here with Stephen. We're having a beautiful lunch out on the ocean. And I raised that question, and you are right. That's exactly what he was inferring they would do with the Roswell technology. If you couldn't figure it out, all you would do is crate it up, box it up, and hide it, because it's all you could do. So what did Spielberg do as far as with the Crystal movie at the beginning, where the Russian agents force him to go to that hangar?
Yep.
And there was one of the Roswell cadavers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it came full circle. There was the hangar. And so
it's probably it's sitting somewhere. This stuff, and the part that concerns me is the little bitty pieces that maybe went to,
souvenirs.
Marcel's family may have it. It may be sitting in a box on a dresser, and somebody when someone else dies is going to go, what's this? It looks like it fell off a 57 Chevy, and why is he saving that and throw it away?
Right. Exactly. And I can't stop thinking about the kid doing the magic tricks.
Yes.
And he has a piece gifted to him by his dad gave it to him.
James Woods, his dad gave it to him on his 6th birthday.
And it vanishes from they kept it in the shed or something? Where was it?
Well, they had like a playhouse, a clubhouse. And it disappeared within weeks. So
it's in the book, by the way. If you haven't read the book, read the book.
That's right. So go ahead, Brad. Because
I want a question about this thing. It's not off topic, but this comet that's headed toward us in theory. Avi Loeb.
That Avi Loeb is convinced may be artificial.
What do you think? Do you know Avi Loeb?
I have. We have emailed, and I just had lunch with a colleague of his just the other day, and he's preparing a paper, and he wants me to even preview it and then recommend it to Avi as far as speaking at a conference in Italy coming up in October, which I'm happily going to do. And so I love the fact that in many respects that they become our contemporary J. Allen Hyneks or our James McDonald's or Stanton Friedmans, and that they have picked up the gauntlet and they add that level of scientific respectability that their own credentials, their own reputation, rises to the fore. And what better people to represent us in that regard? But then there's always that, suspicion in back of my mind that when you have a true whistleblower, such as an Edward Snowden, whether one believe he to be a traitor or a hero, we see what happens to a true whistleblower. They need to flee for their lives, as opposed to those that are able to openly discuss such things. And then you wonder how much of it is potentially disinformation. Are they more of a useful idiot in spreading BS nonsense for for the powers that be, or are they playing some type of covert game with our opposition in throwing them off the trail, so to speak? I think it goes in numerous directions, and in any one of them, it can still serve to become part of the old national security excuse. We've been hearing that since 1947. Don't ask me about it, it's national security, or we can't discuss this, or we can't divulge that, it's national security. Well, that's been a fallback for now almost 80 years. But now,
as soon as I hear that, I tune them out in my head because I'm so sick of it.
Precisely, because that's all it is. That's all it is it becomes part of the noise. But I remember it was Ernst Steinhoff. He was with Paperclip. He was second under Werner von Braun as far as with their rocket program with Operation Paperclip, when the Nazi scientists were brought to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, right after World War II. And I interviewed Steinhoff's personal physician who was with him when he died. And Steinhoff told him all about Roswell, that they risked bringing in a number of the German scientists, the Nazi scientists, into Roswell to examine the wreckage. They just needed to rule out that this was any advanced Nazi technology. They had seen enough come from Germany that this wouldn't have surprised them as well. And so they just needed, a professional opinion in that regard.
Right.
And the doctor said to me, what Steinhoff always said to me? Those who don't know talk, and those who know never talk. And that's where we have to be careful. And even going back to the late Colonel Philip Corso, and in the book The Day After Roswell, which he didn't write, it was written by Dr. Attorney William Burns, that he claimed all this reverse technology, microchips and night vision and fiber optics and everything that was spawned from the recovery at Roswell. If that's all true, why are you talking about it? How are you able to talk about it?
Yeah.
And it was unlike the way that the late Tom Clancy, in writing his novels, he very often would sprinkle true information within his fictional books, because that's how he could get away with it. And he was constantly being called up and being questioned. What is your source on this? Where did you get this information? You realize that you are skirting as far as on national security, that term again, by discussing this as far as in open public, that type of. And it's like, hey, it's a novel, it's fiction. You can't touch it.
Right.
But in Corso's book, it's presented as nonfiction. And so there again, always beware of the messenger. It's one thing what the message is, but what and who is pulling the strings of the messenger? For what effect? What
right. Everybody's a puppet.
Everyone's a puppet. Now, I belong to the EAA. We just had our air show up in Oshkosh. Largest air show in the world. Wonderful. And I just marvel, like when we have the F-22s and the F-35s, and they put on the show, and what they are able to do, and the way they are able to hover, just standing with nose up and just bobbing on their thrusters until the ground starts to shake beneath them, and all at once they kick in the afterburners and they shoot straight up like a rocket. Okay, that's our technology. But now that technology is even 15 years removed.
Right.
So we could only imagine. I mean, the F-117, the stealth fighter, goes back to the mid-'80s.
Yeah. We used to
And
fly that
so
stuff over our house in
the
Lancaster.
SR-71, the Blackbird, our
Mhm.
super spy plane, 1959.
Oh, come on. Oh, shoot.
Did he?
Yeah.
He's getting too close to national security
I'm
stuff.
telling you, there's something to that.
It really is. He is.
Fascinating.
He skirted the question on Avi Loeb.
How so?
Just
We don't know where he stands. On
right.
what's headed our way.
Yeah. Right.
I am looking forward as we get closer to that date to having more conversations about that here on this space for sure. I was going to ask him because he mentioned the young. It seems like there's one remaining firsthand witness that he's trying to track down. Now, an 88-year-old woman, and I wanted to see what his hottest leads were.
Was she the daughter of? There he is. There he is.
we were just talking, you don't have to, we got it. The 88-year-old woman
Yes,
that you're attempting to locate, the last.
And I will.
I love it. It's like you're a dog with a bone. I love it. So she is likely the only remaining first.
Yeah, we're talking about children, obviously, at the time.
Right. Yes. 10 years old at the time.
We're talking about even the Roswell base personnel. If you were 18 back at the time, you're almost 100 years old now.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there may be a couple out there still, but the chances of finding them.
Yeah. So here was my question. It was going to be how many, I guess, what you would consider hot leads do you have? Is it that one there? Obviously, the house that you talked about with the porch. I just wonder where you go from here in your investigation, Don.
Well, as I had mentioned, we're doing another archaeological dig. We are still tracking down families. We, when I look back, granted, we started the investigation at the beginning of 1989. That was our own independent investigation on Roswell. So it's before the internet. We had to physically track down the witnesses. There was no typing someone's name, on a keyboard and hoping something might. No, we had to find these people. And we were doing everything from credit checks to air certification, assuming that many of them who had been pilots in the military, that they would have continued as private pilots. They would have still remained licensed. We were doing motor vehicle, base unit reunions.
Yeah.
We would go to reunions where we would go to the hotels that they were having, these affairs, and we would post notices out in the lobby that if anyone would be willing to speak with us regarding 1947 and total comp, and we were in room such and such, that type of thing.
Pre-internet was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but between Kevin Randall and myself, our phone expenses were over $1,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
Just tracking down witnesses. And then we were making it a point to meet with them personally because we wanted the eye contact. We wanted that, perception of actually who we were dealing with, and as they were conveying to us some of the most unbelievable information. How trustworthy were they?
You gotta look them in the eye.
The wonderful thing about eyewitness, especially first-hand testimony, is that you need to talk to so-and-so. You know who you should talk to is so-and-so. And they have an idea of where they may live. And so it just became that domino that when we did the movie, the Roswell movie, we filmed it in the fall and early winter of 93. It premiered in July of 94. And then that fall, when we were nominated Best Made for TV Movie by the Golden Globes. And both Kevin Rando and I, because it was based on our first best-selling book, UFO Crash at Roswell, and we were also technical consultants on the picture. We were there for, the entire filming of the movie, and we did cameos in the movie as well. But so we're invited to the Golden Globes. And that night, we're sitting in the lobby of the Ramada Hotel at the airport in Albuquerque, watching the ceremonies, looking at one another, going, this is the stupidest thing we have ever done in our lives. We are here on a research trip, but to know we did that, demonstrating that we were fully committed, fully devoted to doing all we could, because we were racing with the Undertaker. Friedman would always say that too. We're racing with the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
Because the attrition rate already of that World War II generation was starting to speed up. And there's nothing more frustrating than finally locating a witness. You make that phone call and you're told they passed away just a year before. We had one where it's the wife and she's just returning from the funeral.
Oof.
And the information is gone forever. And that's the point. And you come away and it's like, we got to be faster. We got to even, intensify, the search. And to date, we've interviewed over 600, either directly or indirectly involved. So we will continue tracking down the families. We have to date over 30 deathbed, all admissible in a court of law. And we've talked to 2 more just in the last month. And that the fathers did confide that it was all true. Let's just say of each and every one of the deathbeds, not a one of them says it was anything but what the first press release stated it was. An actual flying saucer.
Actual flying saucer.
An actual flying saucer. And so not a one deviating as far as from, the official government for explanations, that type of thing. So we're going to continue the hunt in that regard. And we still strongly suspect certain people. And we talked about it earlier with the idea of souvenirs or pieces that are hidden away.
Right.
And so stay tuned.
And that's a good point you slipped in there. Governments changed their story 4 times.
4 times. 4 times.
The best was in the 90s when the what was the Air Force
the anthropomorphic wooden crash dummies.
Yeah.
Crash dummies.
Even he didn't believe it when he was standing out there giving the press conference. He was like, yeah, well, it's basically that's what they told me to tell you, and that's what I'm telling you. And I mean, you can't get to the site anymore either. I mean,
that's what I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the archaeological dig.
They've sealed it off, so to speak.
Where is this dig going to take place, and do you need any volunteers to help?
Oh, of course, we love that.
Brad, road trip.
Oh yeah.
In fact, what we do is we invite specific people, either because of their passion, their enthusiasm, or their wherewithal, their abilities. Because we'll have archaeologists, we'll have geologists, and we have just people that relish the opportunity for being part of something historic.
Yeah.
With the thought that, what if? What if?
I will be hurt if you don't invite me.
Ditto.
Well, guaranteed. You're both invited.
Right. Do you have an idea when that might be?
Next year.
Tuesday at 7.
That's the window. No, it will for sure be next year. I was just there, and there are new owners again, and they're the ones who are, trying to create as many obstacles as they can for us. But I'm going to go over their heads, and I'm very confident that they're not going to stop us.
Don't tip your hand. I love
Why
it.
do you think that the people the people who own the land, and they don't own the particular land where the crash took place, but it's the surrounding, it's access to it. Why are they so opposed to participation?
Because I'd like to believe it's because of our persistence, the fact that we don't give up. It's like if you remember the old TV series, and which I consider one of the greatest of all time, The Fugitive.
Yep.
With David Jansen, Dr. Richard Kimball.
Yep.
And in one episode, and there's Gerard once again in pursuit, and then Kimball looks back, and why doesn't he give up? When will he ever give up? You know, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I just imagine some of the powers that be, and what Don Schmitt's in Roswell again?
Right.
And so I hope I remain that burr as far as in their side, in that all they can do is throw up, obstacles and, try to build the wall a little higher each time. But I don't take no for an answer. And I'm encouraged by it because obviously we're over the target.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I'd be more concerned if nothing was happening. I'm very concerned for the fact that they capped off that well, which we talked about, that they tore down the old Heinz house and that cistern room where we were told pieces were buried beneath. And who would have, and to what benefit, capping off a well that was still functional and then tearing down as far as one of the landmark structures out there. That
was crazy.
It was a landmark. It was a landmark that was not in the way of anything. And then they build up a pole barn, a new shed, and it's a quarter mile away. So it's not like they replaced it with something. No, they just tore it down.
So here's a thought. And I have no idea when I say this. I have no idea where Elon Musk stands on aliens. But what if someone that is got quite a bit of money that is also interested in the Roswell story or just aliens in general, and I'm sure this has already crossed your mind, that could buy this land?
Yes.
Approach
now,
them?
The site itself. Now, it's landlocked by private property.
Yeah.
But ground zero is Bureau of Land Management conservation property. But it always has been. Always has been.
Oh, I don't know that I knew that.
No, there was nothing
both sites?
No.
No, of course not. Of course not. The ranch, yes, of course.
The debris field, where we continue to have the archaeological work.
Okay,
because
I got you.
There would be the greatest opportunity of finding a remnant, finding some artifacts from the crash.
So the debris field
covered an area of almost a mile long.
That's the ranch, but the bodies is BLM.
Correct. No. The debris field is BLM.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And that's where we conduct the archaeological work.
BLM. Okay, I gotcha. And then private.
And that was a dilemma we originally had that we had to address with the idea that what if we find something and the government could step right in and claim government property?
Uh-huh.
And so we struck a deal with them early on that whatever we should find, if you feel you have nothing at risk here, hey, it's just a weather balloon. We want it displayed at the Roswell Museum. And this went back and forth, and we were going through the main BLM office in Santa Fe, the state capital. And then we also went through the Treasury Department in Washington, which is where BLM is actually, as far as part of.
Right.
And so they had agreed to that. Well, they have since rescinded.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
For no other reason than when we had our 2002 dig with the Sci-Fi Channel, one of the volunteers on our dig lifted a piece of material. It turned out to be a piece of duct tape, silver duct tape. And they were hitting the lecture circuit and they were claiming it was the genuine article. Well, because it was in violation of our agreement with the BLM, that it was to have gone, if it would have been any artifact taken from the site, that it would only be publicized given it were at the UFO museum. And here they were profiting by it, and they
1%.
violated that agreement. They withdrew the entire agreement.
And you haven't gotten it back in the 20
No,
plus
but
years since.
I'm going to revisit it as we put this new dig together, because it may, especially with the drones, it may be our greatest effort and covering the greatest amount of territory. And as a result, it may be the most expensive. And I like when you brought up like Elon Musk, even the idea that, and we have had benefactors, we have had people, not at that level certainly,
Sure.
but that have been just wonderfully supportive through the years. Because what we typically do is everybody makes their way to Roswell, they get there, and then thereafter we accommodate, we pay for all the rooms, we pay for all the meals, and we pay for all the transportation back and forth, through the course of the project, that type of thing. So, but it's still, and then all the equipment that we bring in, and then we have to pay the archaeologists, we pay the geologists, and so we keep it as professional certainly as possible. But we've always had those opportunists who are looking for
fame and a buck.
Yeah, fame and a buck, and resume enhancement, I guess. So.
Right. Which I have no problem. Hey, it's a capitalist society. We are, I'm all about fame and a buck. But
within the parameters of an agreement.
A deal's a deal. Yes.
Deal's a deal.
Well, look, Don, it's always just fascinating to talk to you about this topic, and I look forward to at some point in the future not only talking with you again, but also being a part of future digs. I can't recommend enough. There's a 75th anniversary edition of this out now.
Stop holding up the old one.
Witness.
Don, where's the new one?
Oh, well, but it says Witness to Roswell on it, so it's the title, man. There we go. There you go. Witness to Roswell. Y'all, it is so worth your time
to
read this book. And then don't forget the new website. Did I get that right? Roswell-investigator.com for all the latest goings on. Don,
it's a work in progress, but gentlemen, thank you as always, and you are guaranteed both invited, because then and it's not like it even came to mind earlier, whatever you guys would like to do as far as in regards to the show, as far as part of the dig.
That'd be very cool.
I was gonna go hang out.
That's my call. That's my call.
I like that.
Well, and I'm looking forward to next year during the UFO festival in Roswell. I want to take the Daily Mojo back down there and
that was wonderful, Brad. That was great, and I know you. And we were short of speakers this year, as I'm sure they informed you. We had 2 cancellations at the last minute, so we should be fully up to speed next year. And so you'll have your hands full.
Good, I love it.
That's
I love
so
it.
Good. That's
looking
so
forward to it.
Well, Don, thank you so much. Brad, thank you as well, buddy. I appreciate you hanging out with your tree frog aliens back there.
They're my best friends.
Your best friends. And to all of you, thank you for hanging out as well. We'll return with the live streams after a little hiatus back on Thursday, September 4th. And Don, I wish you were going to be in Roswell when I'm going to the museum, but maybe next time for sure, because that is definitely on my list.
Or next festival. So
there you go.
Yeah, we'll definitely meet one day for sure. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank all of you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in for At the Mic.